You've passed your CeMAP, now what? Landing your first role, whether that's employed or self-employed, getting cash and finding clients, that all can be overwhelming. Many new brokers struggle with confidence, lead generation, and making real money. The industry is competitive and no one hands you a playbook. Until now. In today's video, what we're going to learn is how you can land your first job and get cash fast as possible. We're going to talk about sales and lead generation strategies that actually work. We're going to talk about mastering the mortgage process and placing cases with confidence. And we're also going to talk about building a sustainable career with steady income and growth. This, effectively a course, is a step-by-step guide to guide you to success in this industry. Before we go any further though, my name is Ash Borland. I'm a business coach and brand strategist, and I help mortgage brokers simplify success. Over the years, I've helped hundreds of brokers improve their impact and their income, and I'd like to be able to do the same for you today. Now, the goal of this program is that if you did all of these steps, you would then become an ideal client of mine eventually, because I work with people who are turning over 60, 70, 80,000 a year minimum, obviously much higher than that in some cases, but then eventually I want to take them to multiple six figures and have a great lifestyle business. But we've got to get you there. And that's why I make a lot of YouTube content to help you. So all of these sections you can see here, module 1 is breaking into the mortgage industry. Module 2 is getting cash. Number 3 is essential sales and lead generation. Number 4 is mastering mortgage process. And number 5 is building a sustainable career. There's lots of lessons within that. If you have questions, leave them in the comments. I'm happy to answer them there. The first one we have is the module 1, which is breaking into the mortgage industry. So let's talk about understanding the mortgage industry and your career path. So we're going to do an overview of the lenders, brokers, and networks, and then employed versus self-employed within this section. The first thing I'd say with this is to understand that lenders are people who are going to lend the money, effectively. So banks, building societies, there could be private lenders. There's multiple different ones that you're available to. And then a broker is somebody who is going to work with the client to find the best deal from a lender. So they are the go-between. The broker is the middle between the client and the lender. That's the best way to describe it. But a network is the middle between the broker and the lender, because a network goes in the middle of you to be able to do compliance. So it's there, could be your employer. They might be a network in their own right or work under a network. But the network is the person who negotiates with deals with the lenders to get better commission for you, things like that. They also do compliance and they do lots of other things. You need a network to be registered with the FCA, or you can go directly authorized, which I'm going to be really honest with you, if you're like doing this and you're a new advisor, do not go directly authorized. It's hard work, very, very difficult and very unforgiving. So don't do that personally. But most of the time you're going to need to go for the network. So that's the network. Then there's a broker. The networks, by the way, if you're self-employed, that's who you'll go to directly. If you're employed, you'll most likely find that it's already been sorted out by your employer, as I've said. The networks will take commission from you, and they'll also or take a fee as well. And let's talk about brokers, because brokers is a very, in my opinion, it's quite an interesting one. And I think it's one that people misunderstand quite a bit. So with brokers, there are 3 types of brokers. There is what we call a tied broker, multi-tied, and representative of the whole market. So what is a tied broker? Tied broker is somebody who works with one specific provider. So normally you're going to find this is going to be what we know as a bank advisor. So it'd be somebody who's based in a bank, let's say nationwide, and they only deal with nationwide products. So they're a tied provider. I mean, they're tied to one person, and that's it. Then what you have is you have multi-tied. So multi-tied can sometimes be referred to as panel. And this means that you are tied to multiple providers, but you haven't got access to everything. So this is quite common. Connells is probably the biggest one to say with this. They're a multi-tied provider. And so they have access to lots and lots of products, a lot of mortgage products. It ranges between like 15 to 20, depending on where they're at each time. So there's like 15 to 20 lenders on their panel, sometimes more, sometimes less. Always changes. But they are what we know as multi-tied. They can have access any of those that is on their panel. And then you have the third one, which is called representative of whole of market. It's not known as whole of market. You'll hear people say that. That's not what it is though. So representative of whole of market means you have access to everything that is available to a broker. The reason why it's not called whole of market is because there are products that are available that are not with a broker, and so you have to, that technically would be so you can't be called whole of market because there are lenders who don't deal with brokers, and so representative whole of market means if it's available to a broker, you can get it. Those are the 3 types. Is there a better or worse? Not really. It just comes down to client preference. It doesn't really matter, but it's just knowing what they are. So the lender is the person who is going to lend you the money. That can be a bank, building society, private lenders. There's loads of different things out there. The network is the go-between between you and the lender. You and the lender, they negotiate deals. You pay them They do your compliance. You pay them some of your commission. And then the broker, there are 3 types of brokers, and whichever one of those you choose, they all do the same job, just depending on how many lenders they have access to. So let's talk about employed versus self-employed then. The pros of being employed is you're going to have income stability. So you're going to be able to get a salary and maybe commissions as well. Another pro to it is there will be a steady lead source usually, especially if you go to these larger corporate companies. Again, I'll use Connells or Countrywide or L&C, so London and Country. These type of, they're literally just, the phone never stops ringing. Just never stops ringing. You're just going again and again and again. And that's all, it's just the way it is. So those type of companies, you've got commission. So you've got commission and a salary, and you've got a steady lead source and good training normally. It can be really good training. That's another one I'd say. So a pro to that is good training. So you get to learn. But they normally have a training academy, a good support system, structure around that, especially those bigger ones. Employed in an independent, not the same. Employed and independent is pretty much like being self-employed, but you just have a salary. So just so you know that kind of is pretty much. But employed in a larger corporate or a largest company, that's normally, you have those perks: training, salary, leads. The downside to it, however, and there is downsides, work-life balance can literally be non-existent normally, because they will want you to, because they're paying your salary, especially in these larger like estate agency based ones, they're going to want you in for the morning meetings, but they're going to be expecting you to work late into the evenings to see clients because clients finish work late. They expect that. They expect you to work weekends, and they normally, not always, but normally won't give you the flexibility to just go off during the day if you're not busy because they're paying you. And so the work-life balance and the hours are just like non-existent. They're pretty brutal, to be fair. The other thing to point out is that they're going to keep all the leads. So that you're not building a business. And I think this is a mistake people make. They think that when I'm going out self-employed, they're my lead. Like I've made all these clients, I know everybody. If you leave and take those clients with you, that's illegal. They'll come after you for that. They will definitely come after you for that. Like there's cease and desist letters. I know firsthand, I got a cease and desist letter when I did it. Like, don't do it. It's breach. And also now it's a lot more stricter because it's GDPR. The clients don't belong to you. And this is a big mistake I see many people make when they go self-employed from being employed, is that they believe that they're writing 100 to 150,000 a year in their employed role, and they go, gosh, I just went self-employed, I'd make 100,000 a year. But you won't, because you haven't got all that infrastructure in place. They're not yours, they're their leads. And so you have to very much bear that in mind. You're not building your business being employed. You're building your skills, but you're not building your business. And having done that, I worked employed for a long time and then went self-employed. There's some transferable skills, and you learn the skills of how to be a broker. You get to learn fast, but you do not they're not your leads. You're not building anything. You have to go off and do it again from scratch. So let's talk about the flip side of that. Let's talk about the self-employed pros and cons. So self-employed, they're literally the flip side of it. So complete flexibility. You literally you can do what you want when you want. It's in your control. Income, again, completely like uncapped. You can earn what you want. It's really in your control, and your own self-expression, brand identity, longevity. It's just there. So if you're looking to try and build something long-term, you want something that you can work around your life. You want to be able to pursue something and feel like you're part of something and you're creating something. Self-employed all the way. But the cons are, it's tough. It's very hard, because what people don't realize is it's not about actually giving advice, which is what I think everyone thinks being a mortgage broker is. I'm good at giving advice. Great. But it's not about that. It's about lead generation. You have to be able to generate leads. If you can't generate leads as a broker, you will be screwed. Just flat out not going to work. So you have to really, really deep dive into learning how to generate leads straight off the gate. So that is a big con. The second one, like I said, is no income stability at all, like at all. So you could be pretty poor. You've got no leads, you've got no income stability. You could be pretty poor, but at the beginning. But again, that does upscale. If you get good at it, you can make 6 figures, if not multiple 6 figures, which you will not make in an employed role unless you're in certain like areas like London and stuff like that. But you won't make multiple 6 figures in an employed role, but you can as a self-employed broker. You could have a wonderful work-life balance. You could make 40, 50 grand a year, but working a phenomenally relaxed, nice job. Like, it doesn't always have to be about 6 figures. I just want to stress that. So those are the first things you need to think about. Now let's talk about landing your first job as a mortgage advisor. What are the employers looking for, and what are networks looking for? Also, how to approach job applications and interviews, and then leveraging social media to network. A network is looking for you to have CAS, preferably, not always, but CAS and or previous experience in the industry. CAS stands for Competent Advisor Status. We're going to talk about more in the next module, I think, or the next coming ones. And so It is important, though. That's the main thing they're looking for. They're also looking for someone who's got a proven, solid business plan, so you know what you're doing and that you can prove you're going to be able to make it work, because they don't want to invest time in you if there's no return. But outside of that, they're not that bothered most of the time, because they're a volume game. They'll take on lots of people, and some will succeed and some will fail. Most will fail. They're aware of that. They're fine with that. Employers, on the other hand, whole different kettle of fish, okay? Whole different kettle of fish. So let's talk about employers. So an employer, what is an employer looking for? An employer is looking for somebody who's got previous sales experience or some form of, usually sales experience, sometimes some sort of experience within property is preferable, or finance, depending on which way you go. If you're going into an estate agency-based mortgage brokerage, then they'll be looking for property experience more than finance experience, because that's the thing that they're in. So they're looking for somebody who has experience, not necessarily in the industry, but in supporting things, skills that they can transfer across. They're also looking for people who are resilient. So they're looking for people who are going to be willing to push forward and make the, not cold calls, but so to speak, but like to lead generate, to be able to have conversations, to be comfortable with people. That's what they're looking for. If you don't come across in the interview as somebody who's confident and comfortable around people, they're not going to like it. I think some people think with mortgage brokering, oh, it's a job that's like an accountant. It's like a less personal job. And with people, it's more of a numbers job. It's not like that at all. Mortgage brokering requires you to deal with people on a very emotional level. It's a sales role at its core, really. So you have to, that's what they're going to be looking for. Now, how do you approach a job application and or interviews? So for job applications, the first thing to be doing with a job application is making sure that you are, again, presenting that in the best possible light. So you're presenting, and how to approach it, you're presenting that you know that your skill would be good in these scenarios. And one thing I would advise you do to prepare for the interviews is I would research the home buying process from start to finish. The problem you have with your CeMAP exams and your or CeMAP equivalents like CF1, CF6, the issue you have with these things is that the people see it in this financial services institution, but we're not looking at it from a real world perspective, which is that most of these employed roles are going to be looking at you as a broker coming into their business model. If their business model is predominantly estate agency based, they're going to want you to know, how does that apply? They're interested in, do you know what SSTC means? Do you know how a chain works within property purchasing? By the way, this is across the board. Remember, you are a component of the property services, really. Financial property services is what you're in. So you need to understand basic understanding of, what does a solicitor do? How does conveyancing work? What does a estate agent do? How does selling a house work? How does Rightmove work? How a search is performed? These are the things you want to be looking at. And it's not spoken about at all in your books and your studying, because that's not what it's trying to get you to pass. But they are the important thing. They are the thing that that your partners you work with, the solicitors, the estate agents, they're going to want you to be able to understand it. So if you can show that in an interview that you know this, that's going to put you heads and tails above other people. They don't care about your understanding of mortgages. They care about your understanding of everything else. They know you know mortgages. You're applying for a mortgage job. It's everything else outside of that. Everybody else who's applying for a mortgage job should know about mortgages. They know that's a given. So show what you can do outside of that. That's a really important skill. I think one that many people get wrong is that approaching it in a way that you understand their business model and how it works. Now, yeah, of course, if you've got someone like L&C, it's going to be predominantly generated through online and referrals, but it's still part of the mortgage process. You still are in the property world. So understand the property world and you'll do well. And then demonstrate that in the interviews. The thing with the interview as well is, like I said, I would very much, when you're approaching the interview, ask more about the business and learn about the business, and avoid salary and commission as much as possible until they bring it up. This is something we'll talk about in the discovery call section of this, but it's really important that you don't jump to money straight away, because it's a massive red flag. Money and working hours, big red flags. If you're going into employed roles, the money's going to suck when you start compared to the hours you work, and the hours are going to suck. It's going to suck if you're employed. It's going to suck if you're self-employed, but it can become incredible if you stay in the long haul. But there's nothing more than a red flag and annoyance to an employer and or a person who's bringing someone on self-employed, when the only thing or the main thing they care about is hours and pay. And the reason why that is important, and why it's important to stress, is because that's an employee mindset. And to be a broker, you need to be more of an entrepreneurial mindset, because it is a sales role. It's a lead generation role. Whether you're being provided leads or not, still requires you to close them. And so they want to see that you are hungry to do the job, not that you're just interested in your basic pay and when you can clock out of work. Now let's talk about how you can leverage social media and to network and to find roles. So when it comes to finding jobs and using social media in that case, I'm a big advocate of, and I can just say from my experience of this, is if you want to go and get a job at a Connells or Countrywide, they're the ones for the training for the employed roles, go and start connecting with what is known as a mortgage services sales manager, or an MSSM. If you start connecting with them on LinkedIn, you will find that they are the people who are going to hire you. They're the sales managers. So you will find that if you connect with those, if you are qualified as a broker and you interact with their staff, they're going to want to talk to you, because they're constantly got people churning in and out of that job, because there's thousands of brokers that work for them, not for them individually, but for the company, that they're constantly trying to find people to refill them, because people come for 2 years and they leave. That's just standard in those roles. And so because of that, being in touch with them and connecting with those type of people, that's going to get you a foot in the door. When it comes to looking for jobs on a job site, you're trying to find a role, and we're looking for these specific ones, they call the role a mortgage services sales, MSC, mortgage services consultant is what they refer to it. They don't call it mortgage broker. So if you're searching for that, that's anything that's called a mortgage services consultant, MSC, that's what you're looking for. Also go and do your research to find what brands are in there. Companies like Connells own Countrywide, Connells and Sequence. They're the three main things. They're all under the same branch, but they have different names. Under Sequence, there are, 20, 30 different brands under that. And then under Countrywide, the same thing. There's loads of brands. Where I live, for example, is William H. Brown, Sharman Quinney, Barnard Marcus, Knight Partnership. They're all under the same thing. So it's not just Connells. When we say Connells, and when you hear anybody in the industry talk about Connells, because they're they're the biggest employer for employed, they are not, it's not Connells. It's hundreds of different brands. Your New Homes Group is part of them. There's loads. So you will find that finding one of those, that's going to be your way in, first of all, is a good way to do it. So you can search for that role on there or connect with them on LinkedIn. Now, when it comes to the other one, so like regards to using social media to network with people who are self-employed, honestly, join groups. There's some great Facebook groups out there. Gary Dass's Mortgage Pro is really good. The Mortgage and Protection Lounge is really good by Jamie French. And there's another one, which is a recruitment one specifically. I can't remember the name of it, but you'll find it, you'll see it. That's really good as well. And so you can go in there. I'm a fully qualified broker. I'm looking for a role. People will talk to you. People will jump in and talk to you. The best place to do is just put it in those groups, because that's where they are. And they'll speak to you about it. So you can use that. If you leverage your social media to talk about this, you can talk about buying houses now. If you're currently thinking, how do I get myself ready to generate leads? While you're studying, start talking about buying houses. Start talking about what the property process is like in your content. You can start doing that now. That's demonstrating that you're already starting to build a following around this stuff. And then when you offer mortgage services, great, you've already done 6 months of the work, and the employers or anyone that's looking for a self-employed to work with them, they're going to like that. So that's a really good way of leveraging it. So now let's jump into getting CAS, okay, which is competent advisor status. How do we do that? First of all, what is CAS? Well, CAS stands for Competent Advisor Status. Once you've got CAS, now you're officially a mortgage broker. You can now officially give advice once you've got CAS. The way that CAS works is you have to be supervised to see if you can deliver the case competently, which is why it's Competent Advisor Status. Normally, it's a set amount of cases. You will be supervised by somebody within the firm. So if you're an employed role, they're going to supervise you in that. So they'll have your manager, your MSSM or whatever, or an equivalent will do that. Self-employed directly to a network, the network will have a supervisor they will allocate to you. If you are self-employed under a firm, the network might do it, or sometimes your boss might do it. You're the actual AR, which is the appointed representative for the firm, but they will supervise you and they take responsibility for the advice you're giving, and they will guide you through it. The goal is to make sure the advice is competent, meaning suitable. By the way, I'm going to talk about next how you mistake things you can do to pass it quickly, but that's kind of how it works. It normally is going to take you, just so you know, between 3 to 9 months to get CAS. You'll hear different numbers all the time, but truthfully, that's the kind of range. Why do I say 3? Well, because sometimes if you move networks or you move to different roles, if you've got CAS, you still have to get it again. So if I went and got CAS now, for example, it would take me, say, 3 months, maybe quicker, to get it up, because I know what I'm doing. So I would be able to do a case. But if you've never done it before, it could go to that 9-month mark, because 1, we need to get the leads, and 2, we're going to make mistakes. That's what's going to happen. Life, we're going to make mistakes, and then we figure it and we learn from those. So that's how roughly it's going to take, depending on how it goes. But once you've got CAS, you can officially start to give advice properly, unsupervised. You are now really a fully qualified mortgage broker in the eyes of the FCA. So what is the fastest way to get CAS? So I'm not going to talk about in this section, I'm not talking about specific networks or anything like that. I'm just going to talk to you about mistakes you can do to avoid, and also things you can use in order to pass CAS no matter where you work. So the first thing is how to structure your cases for approval. So structuring your case for approval is important, obviously, to get passed. One of the things I would say about this is make sure that your cases are consistent on all platforms. So consistent, you'll have three main things you have to look at, which is what they call the FMA, the full mortgage application, the fact find, which is where you document the information about the client, and then you have the client's documentation. And what they're going to be looking for is, do all of these things match? But if you want to pass, something I do massively, and I still have it in this room, I have them here, is 3 screens. So 3 screens is a game changer. Now 3, you might think, gosh, Ash, that's overkill, but trust me, it's not. So why do I say 3 screens? If you have the FMA on one screen, the fact find on another, and then the documents on another, then it's really easy for you to look and go, income, yes, yes, yes. It's all the same. Date of birth, yes, yes, yes. That is one of my biggest things I recommend. And to optimize this, 2 screens that are normal and 1 screen that is tilted like a vertical. You can put documents on there, anything that's long. That is the ideal broker setup, in my opinion. And it makes it so much easier, especially when you're trying to pass CAS. If you are trying to do it on your laptop, just a little laptop, 14-inch laptop, and you're typing away, I can promise you it's going to be much, much harder because things will get missed. Whereas if you can go, yep, that's great. These are not expensive. So if your employer won't do it, I recommend you do it. Just buy the screens for like 200 quid. You'll be able to get 2 screens, an AOC screen. You'll be able to get those really cheap on Amazon. They're like £90, I think, each. Plug them in, get a little dock. It will save you so much time. If your employer only has 2 screens, ask if you can get a third one. Because you say, look, can I get a third one just to pass this? Because I've been told this is the thing. Because it's huge. Honestly, it's a game changer. I have 3 now to this day, just because I'm hooked on it. But everybody I work with, I recommend you have 3 screens. The second thing is having a right first time checklist. So a right first time checklist is everything that you know you need to have on that case in order to get it right. So the right first time checklist can be many different things, but the main thing with this is is the date of birth on there? Have I got the bank statements? Have I got the pay slips? Yes, 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 yes. Get it then checked over by your supervisor before you submit it. Don't just throw them in and go, I'll figure it out. They will not give you leniency in the way you think. It's not like a normal situation. Because it is fully financially regulated, it's a pass or a fail. There's no like gray. And I think that's the thing that you have to understand. So get it right first time, which is a right first time checklist. And the other thing as well to how to structure your case is note everything. So my dad was head of training for Connells, and then he was head of compliance and training for Just Mortgages. One of the things he used to always say to me when it came to case checking and stuff, you need to remember that the person who's reading that has never read that case before. They don't know the situation. You know it. You've had the conversations. You know the client. You know the kids. So you know the situation completely. They don't. So the case has to read like a book, as if I opened it, I could read it and I know what you've done. That is the bit that people miss because we have it all up in our heads, but we don't have it on there. So note everything. I myself used to, now I recommend clients do it. You can note it with like dictative text and stuff. But when I used to do it, I actually paid for software. I got dictative text and I would talk it because I'm dyslexic and ADHD. So I would talk it through the whole way through. This is what I've done. This is why they've said it. And note it. You can't overnote the case. I think that's important. If it's overnoted and then someone says, oh, that's wrong, because you've done something wrong there, or it's technically not fraud, but you know what I mean? It's a problem. That's good. You want to know that. Okay, I won't do that again. So there's this weird thing in the industry of like, don't talk about it. No, it's fine. Note everything. The more you note, the better you're going to be. Those are my things I would say. So how do you avoid those common mistakes, or what are common mistakes to avoid? Big mistakes I would watch out for personally. Date of birth's not matching is a big one. Making sure that the bank statements are, if certified, are aligned with they're all the same date. That caught me so many times. Making sure that it's clear why you recommended the case. So why you chose a 2-year instead of a 3-year fixed deal or a 5-year fixed deal. It's making sure that they know why. A lot of the time, we just assume those are the big mistakes. It's going to be dates, it's going to be amounts, and it's going to be reasoning as to why they took them. They will catch you out. They are the 3 main mistakes that I would say to avoid. And you don't have to get caught out by them. They're not as difficult as you think. I think people make it out to be way harder than it is. It's not. You'll get past CAS much easier if you don't fight it, if you try and do the best you can first time. Whatever you do, don't get annoyed about it. Don't get emotional about it. People get very upset about it. They're trying to catch me out. They're not. They're not trying to catch you out. You're just not doing it right. Having been someone who's got cast multiple times because of worked in multiple companies, both self-employed and employed, and being dyslexic and ADHD, I'm always getting caught. I was always getting no, and I would get annoyed. Eventually, I was like, it's no point. They're right. Compliance isn't there to stop you. It's there to protect you. If you get it right, you'll be a better broker for it. So let's talk about module 3, which is the essential sales and lead generation strategies. So let's unpack this one. So sales fundamentals for new brokers, how to approach new clients and how to manage objections and closing techniques. So the first thing to remember with a client conversation, how you'd approach this, and this is you're a new advisor, you don't know what you're doing, you feel imposter syndrome is massive. It will be seeping into your bones of just like, I don't know what I'm doing. But, and this is a massive but, the client doesn't know that. And the moment you show that, the moment you lose them. That's very important. The moment you show that you don't know what you're doing is the moment you will lose them. But remember, the client does not know that you don't know what you're doing. They don't know that you started a week ago or a month ago. To them, you are in a position of authority because you are the mortgage advisor. They will see you as a professional. It's yours to lose. But if you're like, oh, sorry, then you'll lose them. So that's very important. You approach this conversation with confidence and strength. And remember, the clients don't know as much as you. They don't. You've passed your CeMAP. You've studied. By the time you're advising, you will have gone through training, whether that's with a network or with an employer. You would have done it. So you do know what you're doing. Can't let imposter syndrome seek in, because when it first starts out, it's terrifying. The job is horrendously hard. And so don't make it any harder than it needs to be. Trust me, don't make it any harder than it needs to be. So approach that client conversation like that. So then the next thing to point out then is managing objections and closing techniques. The first thing to point out with objections is that oftentimes objections arise when, and this is the way that I like to frame it when I work with clients, there's a little bit of sales training within this, just basics, because don't overwhelm you. You shouldn't really be having many objections when you do it well. But you want to get to that point where objections only arise when the client is unaware of that situation. So a great example being a fee. If they were unaware that there was a fee being charged and you've left it to the end, or you've done something within that and it's not, and now they've been kind of thrown at them, then they will object. But if they are not aware, so they are aware, then they're fine. A great example of this, I literally did this yesterday. Went to a chiropractor and I was sat in the waiting room and I heard the person before me talking to the chiropractor. And she said at the end of it, she said, great. What I'd recommend you do now, though, is you now have a follow-up with me every month. So he'd obviously done a treatment plan, and then he said, now to follow. And I could hear him. It was really interesting as a sales guy. And he was like, oh, well, okay. And he started to object. And he was going, well, the cost of that, and don't know if I need it, and I don't know. All of these things, he was using all these excuses. And, and she worked him around, and she did book him in, but she was combating the objection because of that. And why is this important? Because I'd heard the conversation, so I knew that she was going to try and upsell me. And I knew that she wasn't trying to upsell me because I knew I needed it anyway. But interestingly, because she said it, when she said the end, I said, so how many more do I need to book in? And she was like, oh, well, just book it on the website. She didn't try to close me because I'd already got to it. And why is that important? It was because I already knew. So there's only objections if I was caught out. If I walked in there and she said, you're going to have to do another one, I would feel the same as the guy before. By accident, she had already made me aware of what she was doing next because the walls were paper thin. So that is something you have to think about when it comes to managing objections, is as long as the client is aware of it, there's very little for them to object to a lot of the time, because the objection would have come up earlier and they would have brushed it. It would have been much, much less. You would have been able to deal with it before you actually got to the point of the sale. So managing objections is really important in that way. And I would say it's the best thing. So make sure they're aware of everything. Don't try and hide it. Make them aware. Closing technique, one of the closing techniques I'd recommend with this, biggest one, and no one does it, is actually ask for the business. So at the end of the call, at the end of the discovery call, the end of the first meeting, say to them, would you like me to be your broker? Or would you like to work with me? Not, would you like me to do more research? Would you like me to go further with this? None of that, because it's too vague. It needs to be, would you like to use me as your broker? Would you like to work with me as your broker? If they say no, say, okay, that's fine. Could you tell me why? And if they say, I need to think about it, you say, absolutely. I have to think about things all the time. What specifically do you need to think about? So you don't let them leave without telling you why. Remember, you're not trying to bully them into working with you. You can't make someone do something they don't want to do. What you do want to do, though, is make it very clear to them that you have gone and answer this question. Because if the question is, oh, I'm not sure about this one thing, and you go, because I love this, I need to think about it. So what do you need to think about? Think about it means it's too much money. I'm not sure at the price. So get it from them. I need to think about it, because what they're going to do, they're going to go away and think about it, and then you're the resource they need to ask the question to. Ask them straight away. Oh, that's understandable. What do you need? What specifically you need to think about? Because I'm happy to answer any questions. A deal is not a deal if they haven't said yes. If you just left and they're going, oh, okay, well, yeah, I've got all these people and they're just waiting for them to come back to me. No, spoiler alert, most of them are not going to come back to you. They've gone. They forgot. So don't fall into that trap. And that's why I'd say when it comes to sales and brokering that is a big one. So let's talk about generating leads, even without a budget, because you won't have much of a budget. So using social media. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I have a full, deep breakdown of my mortgage marketing blueprint. You can go and check that one out. Or I also have, which is ashbourne.com/blueprint. It's also, link is in the description, which will help you with this. But let's do a bit of an overview on this one. So social media, how do we use social media? No matter where you are, employed or self-employed, you need to be going on social media straight away. And you need to be building your personal brand from day one. People buy from people, and social media is your digital storefront. You need to be getting on video right now and talking about buying properties. Don't even have to talk about mortgages. You can talk a bit about mortgages if you want, but buying properties. But very basic stuff. Go to ChatGPT, search what are the most asked questions about buying a house in the UK. Bang, answer those. Short, 30-second videos every day. Every day. Yeah, very much every day. People don't get that. Every day. Because your face is the thing you're selling. People are buying from you because you're regulated. The products that you sell, every mortgage broker has. The only thing you are selling is you. People don't get this. That's the only thing you're selling is, do I like you or do I not? Which goes back to the closing technique, which is why I say be confident and I guess and like close them down. You know, to make sure you tackle any objections in a very nice way. That is what you're selling. The decision is, do I like you or not? And one of the easiest ways to get people to like you faster is that they already know you when they come on a call. And so even you watching this is what is known as a parasocial relationship. If you're watching this, you may have watched lots of my videos already. You may have just landed on this now. And now you're going to be in for a world of millions of videos. But we have what is called a parasocial relationship. You will feel like you know me in some way. So some of you will eventually progress, and maybe in a 2 to 3 years' time, we will be on a call together to talk about working together. And when you are, you will feel like you know me. And that is video. You wouldn't have got that from a written post or anything like that, or like an image. And so video is crucial. Your job as a broker to generate leads without a budget doesn't cost you anything to do it. Pick up your phone and just talk about what are the most asked questions about buying a house. And buying a house is the best one because it's just non-regulated. It's very loose. Just answer those questions. If you don't know the answer, Google it. It's really that simple. It's not that hard. That's what you have to do. That's the biggest one. Again, I've got a whole module breaking all of this stuff down in a lot more detail, so I don't want to dive into that too much, but that is something you need to do. Straight away, get on there, start making content. And you can do that with your employer. You can do that if you're self-employed. It does not matter. Do it on your personal profiles, not because they're the people who already know you. So don't do it on some random business profile no one's ever heard of. Do it on your personal profile because they're the people who already know you, so you can leverage that. Now let's talk about networking with estate agent introducers. If you are a self-employed person, then this is going to be one of the routes you go down. So for networking with estate agents and introducers, to be honest, the biggest thing you need to know with introducers in general is people who are going to give you leads is it's about what's in it for them. So going in and just dropping your business cards off, I can tell you right now, it's the fastest way to being chucked in the bin. No one's going to care. There's just no point. However, the way you get the people to like you with this is you get them to want to work with you because they like you personally. And you do that by what I call a Trojan horse method, which is my favorite way to do this is a podcast. You set up a podcast and you interview local people, local businesses within the area. That's a really good one. That's the way to do it. You can do local estate agents. You can do local businesses. You can do accountants, whatever. I personally prefer local businesses. And you interview local businesses about their business. And now you are speaking to them and they get to know you and they like you, but it's all about them. It's funny how much people will like someone when they get to talk about themselves for 45 minutes. And then you are meeting them over and over again. They will then become clients long-term or introducers long-term. Long-term. Nothing you're doing right now is going to be done short. And that's the biggest thing I would point out. Nothing when it comes to lead generation is short and fast. You need to be hammering the content on free platforms, leveraging things like podcasts, as in you having a podcast, bringing business owners on. Business owners are great referrers because they understand the value of business, of a client, and they also understand that they want to market themselves. You give them the opportunity to promote themselves. So it's a great win-win-win. That is the secret sauce to getting leads or introducers personally, is podcasting. So if you do short form video and a podcast, you are honestly, that's the foundation of a solid lead generation strategy. Number 4 we've got is mastering the mortgage process. So let's talk about the fact finding and client consultation. This is just a one-off because it's quite a deep dive into this. But structuring a discovery call. A discovery call is going to be your first appointment, your initial appointment is what we sometimes call it. I call it discovery call. You're going to hear me talk about it all the time, but that's what it is. Now, how do you actually structure one? Very, very simply. They need to be about an hour long minimum. Obviously, you're going to have to go in line with your employer, but if you're self-employed, about an hour long minimum. It's probably going to take about an hour and a half when you first start out. And you want to follow a specific structure. And this is what I do when I work with clients one-to-one. We detail this very in depth, so I'll just do a brief one with this. But it needs to follow 4 main parts. Part 1 is rapport with the client, usually about 15 minutes. So you want to build rapport with the client, get to know them. Tell me about yourself. Lead with the client first. Never pitch yourself. Lead with the client. Second one is part 2, which is what we call the interrogation, which is tell me about your current income. So you would be, if they've got the documents, then you've got documents to talk about that. If they haven't got documents, tell me how much you earn. But ask them. It's very closed questions. One is open questions. The other is closed questions. So how much do you earn? Does that look right? Does that sound right? Then you move into part 3, which is your service. This is where you explain what you do, how much you charge, how you work. Some people will do that with presentations. Not a fan of presentations, but again, if your employer requires it, fine. But you need to do this. Make sure you're pitching yourself, your services at this point. You're doing this after you've spent the lion's share of the meeting already talking about them and their situation. Again, why? Because it builds rapport. People like people who are interested in themselves, same as a podcast concept. Worst thing I see people do is they put that first. Okay, let me tell you about me and what I do. They don't even care. They don't even know that you know who they are. So you want to listen to them first and then slowly start to tell them a bit about you. That's when you would be addressing those objections early. So if you know that fees going to be a problem, you're going to address that in part 3. The 4th part is showing them what they can get. So that would be how much money can you borrow, how much, and what would that roughly look like on a monthly cost. You want to show them that at the end because that's what they're coming for. Big thing with this, do not hide the lenders. So do not hide the lenders. People do this all the time. They hide the lenders because they don't want to go direct. It looks bad. Show the lenders. A lot of the time, you want the client to pick you because they like you, not because of anything else. So make them pick you because of that, not for any other reason. And let's talk about understanding lender criteria and placing cases. So how do you match the client with the right lender? This is an interesting thing and something you'll learn more and more as time goes on. There is software out there that can help you understand client criteria. But this is where you, as a new advisor, want to start learning. You want to start going out and learning as much as you can. Call your providers. So if you don't know if there's a weird situation and the client has an odd situation, every time when you're doing it, for the first, I would say 50, 60 cases you do, you should be calling, if you see the top one, call the BDMs, call the team, check the criteria lists. You should be doing that. You need to learn the job. You need to learn the criteria. You need to get to the point where you know Nationwide always does this thing. But you'll only learn that by doing the calls. If you go into the Mortgage Pro group or the Mortgage Protection Lounge, I wouldn't advise you go in there and just chuck in questions and say, I've got a client does this. Who would you recommend? The reason is because that group is brutal. They're very supportive, but on those questions, they're horrible. Don't do that. You're publicly saying you're a brand new advisor and you're asking questions about something that we really would expect an advisor to know. You'll be like lambs to the slaughter. They're horrible in that group for that. They're great for everything else, but in that group, they're brutal for that specific thing. Don't go to that. Have people you can turn to. If you are self-employed, either create some sort of buddy relationship you can do. And people will do this. I've got brokers who are really good, who become friends with new people. Maybe find somebody that you want help with that on, like a broker mentor, that someone who's going to help you. Just see if you can find somebody like that. That's fine. But that's how, at the beginning, you're going to have to do the research. You have to learn. One thing I would also say, and this is one of my favorite things I have, one of my clients, Anish, who's a wonderful guy, says he's always very good with lender criteria. And he always says, People always ask him, how do you know so much about this? And he says, you know those emails you get from the lender? I read them. That's a really good point. It's understanding lending criteria and where to place cases. The lenders will tell you their criteria changes and what they do. They'll tell you in emails. Read them. Don't just delete them. If you read them, you'll be on top of the industry. You'll know exactly what to do. They also do have what they call BDMs, which is business development managers, and their job is to help people place cases and understand their criteria. So if you're confused, reach out to them. But this thing is a learning curve. You're going to learn the job over and over again. And every time you try a new niche or a new type of client, you're going to have to learn it too. But what I would say, my biggest thing with this is do not go into one of those groups and ask, because it will destroy your confidence at the beginning, because they are horrible. They are horrible. They're nice people, horrible at this. I don't know why. I don't know why. It kind of is a pet peeve of mine. But it's just my absolute advice to you is be careful. Brings me on to module 5, which is building a sustainable career. What you will notice is that we're very front heavy at the beginning of this, because I'm aware that when you start, these are going to be the things that you need to focus on. But these end-ons, I'm just giving you little tidbits that you can focus on. And then if you want to, you can go and check out my podcast, which is the Mortgage Business Mastery podcast, that goes more in depth on those type of topics. But front loaded on the first 2 to 3 modules. The last 2 are less heavy, but they're more actionable, just top level, so you know where you can go. So let's talk about managing your pipeline and your cash flow. So what can you expect in your first year? Honestly, employed and or self-employed is all going to be the same within reason. Is that obviously you just have a salary as well, so that's a nice thing. But the reality, what can you expect from a cash flow perspective? It's pretty tough at the beginning, and the reason why is that you get paid as a broker usually. If you get fees, you'll get paid when you take the fee. So if you take your fee on application, you'll get paid on application. If you take your fee on completion, you get paid on completion. Wherever you take the fee, that's where you get paid normally. And that's not across the board really for employed and self-employed. When you do the mortgage though, you'll be paid your proc fee, which is your commission, and you will get paid that normally about a month after completion. Similar to insurances, you will be paid your insurance commissions about a month after they go on risk, which means that they get put into effect, which is oftentimes, not always, same as completion. So you don't get paid until people have a month after they've moved in their house. The average house takes about 3 to 4 months to move into. Bear in mind, you would have most likely seen the client probably a month before they found a house, ideally. So it can take 6 months to get paid on a case you do, which is why it can be pretty brutal and hard for the first year or two, especially that first like 6-7 months. So you need to be aware of that. If you are not aware of that, you can catch yourself out. What you write today is 6 months business. Now you might get early, like it will come in earlier. You'll hear people go, oh, I'll get paid in about 3 months. It's not true. It's like 6 months. Any earlier is fine, but the averaging out, you're going to get 6 months. Some cases can take 9-10 months. So you're going to have this cash flow is going to be tight for a long time. However, once you're rolling, and you've got past that initial hump, once you're a year in, you're now just you're getting paid month on month on month. So it doesn't matter. But it is an initial problem that many people go, oh my gosh, it's going to always be like this. It's not going to always be like that, but it is going to be like that for a foreseeable future when you first start. And again, that's just what to expect. So you won't make much money in your first year, but you'll make a lot more in your second year and then a lot more in your third year. And the great thing about that is it compounds because people will come back for remortgages within 2 to 5 years. So they'll come back to you. And now you're doing the same amount of mortgage you did with purchase, but now you're getting remortgages on top. So it starts to really grow. But the first year can be brutally hard if you weren't expecting it. And I think that's the hardest bit. If you're not aware what you're walking into, you could be walking into a real slap in the face. Let's talk about scaling up. So from surviving like that to thriving. So adding insurance and other revenue streams is the way to make money as a broker, hands down. The biggest way to make money is insurance. If you follow me on Instagram, you've seen it all advertised on, you'll see that I will sometimes post results from clients because all my clients have me on WhatsApp. So that's how we communicate. And I'll get these messages and they'll say they're making a lot of money. The guy made 26 grand commission on one insurance policy. Now that's not the norm, by the way, at all. But it is where you can take an average case size of, say, £1,000 and take it up to £4,000. It is how you're able to make 6 and multiple 6 figures as a mortgage broker is insurance. It just is. And so if you're not selling insurance, you need to learn. Now, you can do that in many ways. I do lots of content on that, but you need to learn how to do that. But I would say at the beginning, I understand it's hard. I understand when you're coming in, you're learning mortgages. Learn what you know. Bring the other things in later if you need to. But be aware that that's how you make your money. You make your money through selling solicitors, insurance, buildings and contents insurance. Those are the main three ways you're going to make a lot more money than just a mortgage. Because a mortgage fee and a proc fee isn't great. It's okay. It's good income, but it's not great. Don't be one of those guys or girls, I say guys collectively, but one of those people who is not going to charge fees and not going to do any insurance because they're just scared. Because that's how you make that life-changing money if you do it that way. And that is my deep breakdown of really that crash course in getting onto the career as a mortgage broker. Realistically, it is a great career and you can do very, very well. If you do have any questions, like I said, leave them in the comments. What I would recommend you do is check out this one here, which is my lead generation, the authority formula video. Highly recommend you watch it. It would lead really nicely on from this one. So give it a click.